This morning I'm in Carmel, Indiana, and we're going to explore 5 of the reasons why Carmel is on average just noticeably more expensive than a lot of other places around Indianapolis. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Living in Indianapolis channel. And like I said, we're going to talk about Carmel and why it's so expensive. So I've got 5 reasons we're going to go through. And the reasons are based on, at least some of them, absolute fact. And then some of them are anecdotal. So they're based on my experiences with conversations that I've had over the years with a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. So people that are local, and they're moving within Carmel, or they're moving from, let's say, Indianapolis to Carmel, or even Fishers to Carmel, just someplace else to Carmel potentially. And then also from other parts of the country. And usually people from other parts of the country have a different perception about Carmel and how expensive it is. Sometimes it seems like a deal to them, and then other times it seems even more expensive than what everyone else around Indianapolis thinks about Carmel. And then internationally too, so people from Europe, people coming over from Australia, or other parts of the world as well, because whether you think about it or not, there are people from other parts of the world that are moving to Carmel, Indiana, and for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's obvious reasons and sometimes it's not. So point number 1 is pretty factual actually, and how it can affect you. And it's supply and demand. I mean, simple supply and demand. If you look at the numbers, Carmel is a city of 100,000 people, and that means there's a limited number of housing here, or a limited number of houses, or townhomes or condos, whatever it is. In fact, if you look at townhomes and condos, it's even smaller, the number of choices. And I'm sitting out here, not sitting, but standing out here on 126th Street, not too far from downtown Carmel. It's barely west of where I'm standing right now. And I'd say maybe half a mile or so. And behind me, we've got some townhomes right here on 126th Street. And I mean, if you look at this, I am walking along and it's just sold sign, sold sign, sold, sold, sold all the way down this road, with a couple that are available here and there. But those signs that say available, they actually might not be available anymore. They might be gone right now. So even something like this, which townhomes are not in everybody's wheelhouse. So if you have kids, you may not want this because you don't have a whole lot of yard space, and you can't just let your kids go outside an awful lot, especially on a road like this, 126. If you have young kids, you're not gonna allow your kids to come out here in the front. It's just less flexibility. Plus there are lots of stairs. You know, it's just not for everybody. But they're still flying off the shelves because there really aren't that many, and they're a pretty good price for where you are. But 100,000 people, so there are only a certain number of people that are actually selling their home at any one time in Carmel. And then if you specifically are looking at Carmel, the demand, you aren't necessarily interested or can afford every single house that's available in Carmel. So if you look at all the homes that are for sale right now, there might be over 100, which for a city of 100,000 people is actually not that many homes on the market. But you have a narrow price range. Let's say it's between 400 and 500,000, or between 500 and 600,000. Well, that narrows the list a lot. It might narrow it down to 10 or 15 homes. And then inside those 10 or 15 homes, there are probably 80% that are just total throwaways for you. You wouldn't consider them at all for a number of different reasons. Maybe it's too old, maybe it's too new, maybe the neighborhood is just not what you want. It has too many trees. Maybe it's not enough trees. I mean, you can just go on and on and on about preferences and what people want. So that demand is made up of a lot of factors. So it's simple supply and demand. There just aren't that many homes available, and the demand is really quite high. And this happens to a lot of places in the country. But what controls, not necessarily the supply, but the demand, are these other 4 factors. Next point is that Carmel is just really, really nice. And I mean, it's pretty uniform throughout the entire thing. You can find newer parts, older parts, I'd say more run down parts, although those are few and far between, honestly. And certainly really new parts all over the place, but for the most part, this is anecdotal. It is a bit subjective in that it's not something you can put an objective measure on it, but it's just very clean. And I'm driving along right now down 126th Street, what I just came from. I'm coming in here to this Range Line Road intersection, which will cut right through the heart of downtown Carmel here. I'm going north around a roundabout. The roundabouts are all over the place. They're nicely landscaped. It cuts down on wires. It's just a super nice place to live as far as how it looks and how it feels. And it's quite uniform, which is pretty amazing over a city of 100,000 people. So back to that first one, supply and demand makes it sound like 100,000 isn't that big. It's large enough though, and it's large enough to where it could get to the point where you've got some not so great parts and some other really great parts, and there's a big disparity between them. Of course, you have some of that in Carmel because you have multi-million-dollar homes in Carmel, and then you have homes that are really super old and you need to do some work to those, and they're one after the other. And so that area might feel a little bit tired, but it's certainly not bad. And those areas are pretty small, because when you're talking about a home that was built, let's say in the 50s in Carmel, how many people were in Carmel in the 50s? Not very many. Not very many at all. In fact, I can't even think of what the population really was in the 50s, but we're talking about a handful of thousand of people. Handful of thousands, that's it. And now you're looking at 100,000. So it just comes up over and over and over is that, hey, we can't believe how clean Carmel is. We can't believe how nice everything generally just looks in Carmel. Is it a mountain view or an ocean view? It is not, of course. We all know that. But it still doesn't mean it can't look nice and just give that feel of really being a nice place to live. Another point is that it is super, super safe. And a lot of the statistics are going to actually point to that. Whether you're told one thing or the other, the statistics will say it's safe. Now, there's theft everywhere, but I just parked here on the street. It's of course middle of the day, but even if I parked here on this street 10 o'clock tonight, I'm going to do things that are sensible. So if I've got valuables, they're not gonna be out where people can see them. But the chances of my car being broken into actually are pretty low. But you still have a little bit of theft everywhere. And in a city of 100,000 people, you're always going to have a little bit of crime. You can find places that are probably safer, but usually those places are out on their own, and a lot of times they're smaller. But Carmel's 100,000 people, but it's buried right in the middle of other cities. So you've got Westfield to the north, you've got Fishers to the east, you've got Zionsville to the west, and of course Indianapolis to the south. There are a lot of people that come through Carmel, not just live in Carmel, but it's exceptionally safe. Of course, what most are actually worried about though, as far as safety goes, is the violent stuff. Can I get shot? Can I get mugged? Can I get beat up somewhere? Am I gonna get hurt someplace? And overwhelmingly, the answer is extremely low probability of something like that. Extremely low. The violent crime is exceptionally low. Gang-related violence, random shootings, things like that, they happen in many places in the country. But statistically, in places like this, it is nearly zip. So a lot of people like to at least place their bet on someplace that statistically shows that it's relatively safe, or it's actually extremely safe. I'm crossing the street right now to get into this next point. I'm in downtown Carmel, so it looks fantastic. But people often ask, is there a place, and this goes back to that being nice, looking around, nice or safe? Do I have anything to worry about? Are there places in Carmel to avoid? And that's a subjective thing, of course, and I don't know what you should be avoiding and what you shouldn't be avoiding, but I think what you're asking is there any place that's just not good from a safety perspective more than anything? But second to that is desirability. So if I move in there, am I going to be hurt later by desirability? Is anybody else going to want to buy my house whenever I leave? Well, we can definitely talk about a lot of details with that and even look at statistics for that and how the prices or showings, demand, things like that are going in particular parts of Carmel. But the answer very widely is no. There isn't an undesirable place in Carmel because it is in Carmel. So you get to be a part of the infrastructure here, the roundabouts, and the roundabouts are absolutely good. It's one of the things that makes it so nice. And if you don't like them, that's your opinion, but I mean, I'm willing to fight over the roundabouts and how good they actually make everything. So there isn't an undesirable place. Are there fixer-uppers homes in Carmel? Without a doubt, there absolutely are. And especially really close to where I am right now in Central and East Carmel. This is the older, more core part, kind of the original part of Carmel. Now the downtown area has really taken off and been built up. There are a lot of older buildings here, but they've also been restored, been cleaned up quite a bit. But you can find some fixer-uppers in Carmel, and you can find multi-million-dollar homes in Carmel. So there isn't a place that I would say people are shying away from at all. So no, that's another reason, is that you can live pretty much almost anywhere, and as long as you're in Carmel, you're in a desirable place. My last point, it's location. So you could take Carmel and put it anywhere in the state and anywhere in the country, and it's still probably going to be a nice place. But Carmel still does depend on Indianapolis. It depends on Westfield to the north, Fishers, Zionsville, and even some of the other towns that surround Carmel, because you have people that work in Carmel and they might live in Fishers. They might work in Carmel live in Carmel and work in Fishers, something like that, or Indianapolis. So they're living here, they travel to Indianapolis for their job, or maybe a couple days a week, something like that. My point is that if you were to take Carmel away from all the cities that surround it, it probably would hurt, I think, a little bit, but it would still be a really, really nice place to live. But the fact that it is buried within all of those other places gives it an advantage. So you could live here in Carmel and you can enjoy everything that Carmel has to offer, like this whole downtown area, all the entertainment they provide, and of course the Monon Trail, which I'm coming up on right here. That's part of Carmel, but it's not just part of Carmel, it's part of some of the other cities. You get to enjoy Carmel and the other cities too. So just as an example, this coming weekend, I know we're going to Victory Field, see the Indians, and that's in Indianapolis. So if you were in Carmel and you lived way out in the middle of nowhere, then you wouldn't have that. So you can go and enjoy easily anything that Indianapolis has to offer. People coming along on their bikes, I don't want to get run over. Or, go down this way, you could go to Westfield. Westfield has things going on. Fishers has certainly a lot of things going on. It's a city of the same size. And just as an example, you could go to the Nickel Plate Amphitheater. Their amphitheater there in downtown Fishers just blows everybody away. There are thousands of people there for concerts during the week, and it's super family friendly. It's a blast to do. They have that over there, so you could go over there and do that. And that's actually a question a lot of times people have with Carmel. They're dead set on being in Carmel, but either can't afford it or just can't quite get in because they're just not what they want. But they can look at some of these other cities that surround it and they can get in there because they can get enough house within their price range. But it's pretty cool because you could live in those other cities like Fishers and still come over here to Carmel and enjoy Carmel. In fact, sometimes your drive from Fishers or Westfield to where I'm standing in Carmel, I'm actually walking on the road here, not the Mona Trail. this car was waiting on me, I guess. I don't know for how long. But you could drive over here or ride your bike over here, but certainly drive over here in the same amount of time as if you lived in a particular place in Carmel. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. You know, a fairly short drive to park and walk out to some of these restaurants, or, you know, get on your one wheel like that guy behind me. Just, my camera freaked out on me. I don't know why. I think it was just turning its camera around all the interesting places. So my point is, you can enjoy Carmel if you don't have to live here. So those are some of the reasons that I have run into time and time and time again as to why Carmel is just statistically and objectively a more expensive place around Indianapolis. So if you have questions about any of those points, don't hesitate to reach out any way that you know how. We'll absolutely have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to move to Carmel or any other places around Carmel that could potentially even be a better fit for you. And we'll catch you in the next one.